All right, welcome back. I'm Corey Rogers with the Carpenters Union. This demonstration is going to be on installing a pre-finished frame, aka a timely frame. So I got two timely frame boxes. They come separate. We got the head jamb with trim, and we got the hinge and strike jamb with the trim in a separate box. So if you look over here, I got a floor plan. Come on in. So the opening that I'm going to be installing is this opening right here, which is this one right here. Okay, a pre-finished frame is meant to have the sheetrock, the texture, the paint, the flooring, everything is there ready. When you install the frame and the door, it's kind of a done deal. It's ready for hardware. For us, looking at the hardware schedule that's given, so this door number is a 107A. What is the handing of the frame that we need? 107A.
Right hand
timely
reverse.
frame. The door's a right hand reverse. What is the frame going to be? Because a frame can only be a left hand or a right hand for frames.
Left hand.
So it's going to be left hand. So on your boxes, you need to be looking for, such as this. We got an L for left hand, LH for left hand. The other things that we need to be looking for is this 50S. What that 50S means is that it's 5 0/8 throat dimension. So if I ordered ahead of time, like Tiny says, the manufacturer says in their instructions, their ordering instructions, 3 5/8 stud, 5/8 sheetrock, 5/8 sheetrock, that adds up to 4 7/8. We all know that, or if you don't know, you should know that there's wall growth. And timely, or pre-finish, timely knows that there's wall growth, it's just expected, especially up in the head and especially down there on the bottom. So if you actually measure, you're gonna be closer to 5 inches. So here is 4 15/16, and then down here, I got 5 inches, and elsewhere, I'm gonna have 5 inches as well. Some areas it might be just slightly big, and then some areas just slightly less than that 5 inches. What timely calls for is when you're ordering ahead of time, you order an 1/8 inch larger than that throat dimension that's on the set of plans. If I can physically go out and measure it, don't add an 1/8, you order what it shows. In this case, we're gonna use 50S, okay? It's a left hand, hinges go on this side, left hand, okay. So the next thing is I'm gonna start staging all my material. So I got the hinge jamb, being really careful on the finishes so you don't scratch it up, creating damage. It's got trim, pieces of trim, stage that right nearby so it doesn't fall over. We have a strike jamb right there, and then the boxes will put away for disposal or to save in our case. Then we got the head jamb, which is going to be right here. There's a few things that we're going to have to do with it we need to take into account, and that being the closer. Does it get a closer? If it gets a closer, it might get one or the other of these reinforcement plates. If it gets this one, which is a closer called a parallel arm, or it goes on the push side of the door, this is your first step. If it gets a regular arm closer, which goes on the pull side of a door, it gets this style, which is like almost your last step in the process. So pre-plan your work, look for your reinforcements. If it doesn't call for a closer, you don't get either one. Okay? So opening up your box, here's your head. Another note, it's thin, sharp material. I'm sure you, my apprentices didn't call me out on it. Wear gloves, okay? Something else is when you're looking at the frame, the 1 7/8 side, that's the door side. The opposite, whatever it is the opposite of the door. So in this case, my door is on this side here, So I'm going to bring this down right like this. Try not to turn, spin, because you might measure from the wrong side. Okay, now I'm going to ask, what does it get a closer? 107A, does it get a closer?
Yes.
Yes. So in this case, we get a 4040 XP closer, which that type of closer can be on the push side or can be on the pull side of a door. So now you need to start using rules of thumb is put the closer on the most inconspicuous side. What does that mean?
Side that no one's gonna see.
That's right. An architect wants to see a pretty door, doesn't want to see a pretty door covered up with hardware. So put it on, when possible, on the inside of the room. So in this case, the inside of the room is going to be the push side of the door, which is a parallel arm. Okay, 4040 XP. So we got our closer. It's a 4040 XP. You're gonna have to get that so you can have the instructions. So getting out the instructions. By the way, on the hardware schedule, does it tell me what degree opening to set my closer to? Hot jam, we don't need that. And we need the push side. And you're okay, and it's okay to show it.
90 degrees.
Right here we got 90 degrees, so that's what we're aiming for the closer. That's also the backing plate that goes inside it. So looking at the instructions for the closer, we got a parallel arm mount. So that is parallel arm mount, that's the push side of the door. So you come down here to this plate right here, which is this bracket, goes on the head just like this. Or rather it'll be, technically it's gonna be over here on this side. Okay? Gotta have a backing plate, which is this one, to be able to drill and tap for your closer. That's our first step. So the measurement that I need, which is right here, from the rabbet or edge of door, I got 90 degrees. I'm measuring over 11 1/2 inch to the center of that, which will be the center of this. Okay? I go with each one of those. If I went with the 120, which is 10 inches, it'll probably capture the 180, the 120, and also the 90. Okay? But I'm gonna stick with 11 1/2 inch. Getting started, have a little cleaner. Even if it's brand new material, you want to wipe it down, and then as well as the brand new backing plate that you're going to be using. So this, I'll mark it first. Here's the edge of the door, right here. The door's on this side because it was like this, coming down. Measuring over, and I got 11 1/2 inches to the center. And clean your material. And then this one, the bigger side, goes down on the bottom. So I'm going to flip it over. I've installed them before, brand new, and it's got, when they're brand new, they have like a little bit of oil effect from the factory, and it sticks, and then when you go to drill and tap, it separates. So by cleaning it, it gets a better bond of the double-sided sticky tape. That's a good tip. Okay, let that dry. I'm gonna flip it over. It's gonna go right in here. That off, and it actually sticks really well as long as it's clean. So generally this reinforcement plate, which it talks about in the instructions, but it doesn't give a location because there's so many different closers that there could be with those different measurements. So the backing plate usually comes separately. So you gotta order that separately, okay? In commercial, they also don't come in the box that I've seen. They also come separately. So you'll make sure you grab that as well. Okay, let me put my instructions away and we'll get on with installing our frame. Alright, set this to the side, get my trim. Then goes right down the side. Box gets cleaned up. Alright. Now I'm ready for install. Some other things that I haven't checked yet is making sure my opening is big enough. Okay? So I have a 3.0/7.0 door. I need to have at least 5/8 on each side and about 1 inch on the top. So that adds up to 3 foot 1 1/4, and I have 3 foot 1 1/2. And to the top, ideally is 7 foot 1 inch, and it really depends on the flooring. I have 7 foot 5/8 of an inch. That means that's going to be really, really tight. Okay. If I had a thicker floor, that won't quite be tall enough. It really needs to have 7 foot 1 inch. Okay. And timely it says it in the installation instructions. All right. But it'll work. The other thing is the flooring. This is our flooring. Say we were going right on concrete, or in this case, plywood. Being careful not to scratch up the wall. It goes up like this. I stage everything so that it's all in arm's reach. Okay, so I have this, bring it in. And something to note, these little tabs right here, press in. Make sure those are there. They're only pinched in so they can get knocked out real easy. And what those do is they help keep it from curling when you go up and over the head. So that's barely in. And when I try to wrap it around, I'm kind of pushing and wrapping, pulling back and wrapping, and not just pressing into the sheetrock. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm all the way against the ground. Okay, the next step that I do is I'm going to take my level, and it's in the installation instructions, as well as trade tip 126. Buy my book. Someday I'll have a book. What it says is the hinge jamb needs to be an 1/8 inch higher than the strike jamb. So what that means currently is this is a little bit lower as is. So I'm going to take some shims, say where we're at, 1/16 is going to get me level. So I need 1/8 inch higher. And that's what it calls for, so 1/8 inch higher. So I'm going to put that under this side here. And part of the reason is this thin metal is going to have just a little bit of flex. So it's going to come back just a little bit. I can't go down with this jamb, but I can go up if I needed to. Okay? So I'm going to raise it up. Slide that under. Let that come back down. then I'm done with this. Okay. Using a screwdriver, if you gotta move it left or right, because what I need is it to be pretty close to the center of the opening. So what I look for is this gap right here matching this gap right here, which it doesn't look like it is. So I'm going to take something, I'm going to go inside here on both sides, and I'm going to pry it that way. If you just hit this, you've knocked that clip off. So use the opposite side to pry it over. What I'm looking for is that and that, looking pretty equal. If you're too tight to this side, the framing that's behind here, the stud, the screws will go through, hit that framing, and actually pry the door frame or the jamb off of the framing. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm also looking down here for that. Now, I'm ready for my plumb box. This has to be on the door side, on the hinge jamb. Like that. Tray tip 127. Have it a 1/16 out of plumb. What that means is I need to pull the door back that 1/16 so the flex makes it level and plumb. Makes sense? If I had a 4-foot wide door, an 1/8 inch out of plumb, because it's just a heavier door. Okay, so it's about where I want it here. So I'm going to see where I'm at down here on the bottom. So currently, I'm about 1 9/16. So it needs to come out, and as well as I'll probably bring the head over just a tiny bit. That's pretty excessive. What I'm after is 15/16. I'm gonna go. Right there is 15/16. All the way up. Okay. Using sheetrock screws. All right. Now, right at this point, I have it a 1/16 out of plumb. That's tray tip 127. Okay. Just checking at the bottom and at the top. Using your self-tapper sheetrock screws. Put one at the top. Okay. You don't have to sink them in there. It actually, if you sink them in way hard, a whole bunch, it distorts the metal. Okay. Down on the bottom, and then I'll double check afterwards, make sure we're still good. Making sure we're still at 15/16. And then check right in the middle, so we don't have a bow in it. And I'm looking for just a strong 15/16, which currently I'm gonna pull it back a little bit. Right about there, a strong 15/16. On this side. So we got 15/16. You need to have a screw at this point above and below each hinge. It is important to have it above because just that flex that's going to happen. Above and below. Something to also notice when you're screwing into sheetrock. If I go down or if I go at an angle, it'll actually slide the frame over. If I go back, it's gonna push it over. Okay, so pay attention to how you're screwing it. Make sure you're tight, no shims. And then each pair of holes gets a screw. Pair. And then if you mess up, you got a backup if you need to move it over to the other pair. Okay. On the other side, I'm going to take a straight edge. Here's a straight edge. Okay. Slide that down. Taking a speed square or a combination square. Set it right here, and I'm looking for this gap here and that gap there to be equal. So right, and it's just kind of like an eyeball. So that's for your flooring, keeping things square. So that right there, I'm gonna say is good. So I'm gonna put a screw in it. Right there. At that point, now I'm gonna come up here to the head. See this line right here? It's not in line with this one. So I need to drive this head that way to make this in line, or even slightly on that side of it. Okay? It might, unfortunately, open up a small gap. Which I can get rid of this to show you. Open up a little bit of a gap right there. But it's better to be a gap here, small gap, than a gap right in your face over on the strike side. Okay? So using this screwdriver, right about like that, which it didn't even look like it opened it. Okay? It's flush here, making sure you're tight. And also at a downward angle, self-tapper, at a downward angle, and put that in there. Okay? Now I go to the other side, and I'm going to do the same thing with the head. Okay, and then I'm going to line this jam up with the edge on this side. So, downward angle. And this side you can get away with left to right a little bit to make sure this joint right here is nice and tight. I'm going to leave it right there. And then load these up with screws every other hole.
Does it matter if we start screwing from the top to the bottom or bottom to the top?
It does not matter. What it does matter is put this in first on this side, because this is locked in, it won't move left to right. Lock this in downward, make sure there's no gap there, and then push this left to right to make this as best as it can get. Okay. On the Timely website, what I've read is that it says just screw this and then swing your door. I find that you got to do both, otherwise the jam twists and you don't get a good result when you're trying to set the door. So maybe that's trade tip 128. Huh? All right, the next thing, asking the question, where do I have screws at? I have screws right here and right here on the hinge jam. Do I have the strike jam screwed off?
No.
Do I have anything on the head other than at the one pivot point?
No.
No. Okay, now it's time to swing the door. Okay. Back on this side, so I got a door. Make sure you got a number 3 tip. All right, now we're gonna come back on this side. All right, so now we're gonna fit everything to what the door is doing. So currently, rather than just smashing this onto it, I'm gonna take my 1/8 inch shim. And what I'm looking for is that this right here looks good, which it doesn't. Right now, currently, I think it needs to go up. Not that much. Right about there. That also means this jam's gonna come up here in a minute too. So continuing on with our process, using sheetrock screws, self-tappers. Normally you're gonna have another clip right here, but we put a bracket on there, reinforcement bracket on there at a different class. We have a clip just like that. You'll see that one I'm gonna pry off here in a minute for this other reinforcement plate. Coming back out with it, pull the, rather than just pulling it out, try not to scratch your powder coat. Using a putty knife, trying to get under, raise it up to this right here. Now it's raised up. I want it. Put the 1/8 inch back in, like that. Now it's ready for a screw. I'm going to angle it just a little bit. I want to keep that there, that 1/8 inch. And I can also eyeball down here. So here I want to move it over a little bit. Or you can use your 1/8 inch shim. Either way. Down here on the bottom, looks like it needs to come back towards the door a little bit. There. Pull this out, close it, see how it looks. It looks pretty tight right there because the thing keeps coming back. I'm pushing the door over. So try and get that can, and then come back to the other side. Going back to the bottom, squaring it. So right now I got a little gap and a great big gap. So I got to bring this back over square, somewhere right. Wants to spring back on me. Right about there. About there. Check it. Yep, it's good. I'm gonna go up to the top, put one in the head, so that right now there's a gap right there, so I want to pull down on it. And then I'm trying to make left to right, make this joint right here look good. Even if it doesn't on this side quite line up, which it does, that looks pretty good there. I'm putting screws in every other one. The other side. This trim can stay here. Actually on this side, check everything. You shouldn't have to shim a hinge on a pre-finished door. But occasionally, if you need to help keep things from growing, this I could shim back. Okay. Currently, the way what it's showing, because it's tight right here, and I don't want to go too much that way, I would shim this hinge, pulling it back. Okay. So now we're almost to the last step. Let's say the closer needs to go on the pull side at some point. If it goes on the pull side, it needs to get this little reinforcement plate like this one here. Okay? About this reinforcement plate, so this is the back side of it. It's got this little step in it. The bottom of that step goes with the top of this frame here. That way the trim can hook over it, grab onto it, and it also holds the trim in place. Okay? All right, so what I need to know is left to right, where it goes. You know, it's gonna go somewhere over in this area. So we gotta go back to our closer, depending on the type of closer it gets. And it got that 4040 XP. So getting my instructions, we gotta find the pull side. Here's the pull side, 120. That's the only option I got is 120. It'll go 90, so that's gonna work. Looking down here, what we're after is for a left hand, that's what this one is, left hand. I'm looking for that plate right there. What that is this foot that goes up on the trim like that. So what I need to know is the center of it, not a hole, but a center of it. So 10 and 13/16. Between the two is 1 and 15/16, which is about 1 inch from this hole to the center. So I'm gonna go 11 and 13/16. So 11, and that is from the door. So here's the door, measuring over, which I happen to have a mark of 11 and 13/16. I'm gonna take my screwdriver. This plate right here, this bracket is in my way. So I gotta pry that off, and I'm gonna leave it off and discard it. Got that taken off. Use your hammer. Be real careful not to ding up the wall. Got it all flattened back down. So this bracket comes with lag screws. That away. Comes with these like wood lag screws like this. It's meant to go through this and into the header. So through the sheetrock and into the header. So I need to drill a hole that's the size of the shank of the screw, which is a 5/32 for that shank. If you go too small, it's just going to pry the frame off of the wall. So using your drill, make sure I use some oil. Mark it first. All right, the center of it, I just need to eyeball the center. And making sure that that back lip is right on this top of the frame. So right about there. Mark it. Mark it. I got 2 marks there. All right, making sure your earplugs are in for drilling. Got some cutting oil to make sure your bit doesn't get too hot. All right, now we're into the header. Put my bits back. Always trying to stay organized. This is for production. Now with the number 3 tip, drill, pilot holes drilled for our vacuum plate. So we need to go ahead and put these lags in. Now that that's on, now it's ready for trim. We got our header piece of trim right here. So I need to put my gloves back on. Making sure you're kind of equal on the top. Pull down and it hooks. Right like that. And I got my side trim. This might slide, and I'll fix that in a second if it does. I'm gonna hook and pull, And I want to be up on top of my shim. So that's on. Got my other side. And I want to clean up any sort of corners here, like this, if I need to. Nice and pretty. Make sure those miters are nice and clean. And now, what I would do next, I go to the other side, put the trim on the other side, and then I'm all done, ready for hardware. So again, I'm Corey Rogers with the Carpenters Union, and be safe out there.